Today, we are smoking and rotisserieing a beef tenderloin. My name's Angelo with KamadoCook.com. If you're new here and want to see more videos like this, hit the subscribe button. If you've been here before, I'm sorry I'm not better looking. So today, we are prepping for our Easter meal, and I am making a 7-pound prime tenderloin. And tenderloin is filet mignon. So it's just a giant prime filet mignon. This was very expensive. This was a couple $100 expensive. This is not cheap. So I don't want to mess it up. I also don't need to overcomplicate this. So what we're going to do is dry brine it. We're going to put it in the fridge overnight, dry brining. Then we will season it, and we're going to go ahead and put it on the rotisserie, and we're just going to smoke it and cook it just like that tomorrow, and we're going to get a beautiful crust. But for now, we dry brine. And on my dry brine, we are using smoked salt. If you've seen our other videos, I smoked this salt. I took this Morton's coarse kosher salt and we smoked it. We cold smoked it. We injected some nice smoke flavor, and that's what I'm using for the dry brine. So all I'm doing is taking this salt, spreading it all over this piece of meat, and what's going to happen is I'm going to put this in the refrigerator just like this overnight, and what's going to happen is the salt is going to pull the moisture out of the meat, and then the meat is going to reabsorb that salt, and as it does, it's going to pull that salt flavor and that salt to the center of the meat. And now you have meat, this is pretty thick, that's going to be seasoned all throughout the inside and the outside. It also will dry out the outside nicely, and the drier it is on the outside, the better crust we're going to get. So all I'm going to do is put a healthy coating of this smoked salt. You can use any salt you want. It just has to be coarse, right? Not table salt. That would be disgusting. So nice, thick, chunked salt. I like this smoked salt because it's a nice way to inject a little bit of smoke flavor without being too powerful. Okay, it's that simple. So I've covered this entire thing in salt, and it's weird, right? Because you're not seasoning it, meaning this isn't like a brisket where I want every inch of this covered in salt and I don't see any of the meat anymore. I only see seasoning. But it's also more than a drizzle, like Salt Bay, if I was just topping this off. So I have a decent coating of salt on here, and I am not doing a single thing to this till tomorrow. I'm going to leave it just like this on a cooling rack. This is going directly in the refrigerator, and it is just going to sit there overnight into tomorrow, and it's not till about 30 minutes or so before I want to cook it that I'm going to take it out of the refrigerator. We're just going to season it up nice and easy, put it on the rotisserie, and then we'll go ahead and get it started. So I will see you tomorrow. All right, this has been dry brining for a full 24 hours, and now it's time to prepare it. So if you've seen videos that I've done before, you know that I hate overcomplicating things. Unfortunately, this is going to get a little complicated, and that's because this tenderloin is about 17 inches wide, and I have a classic Joe, which is, once I have the JoeTisserie, and that's 17 inches is about the max I can do on there. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut this thinner side. So if we look, and this is how you know it dry brined perfectly. It's nice and stiff. The outside is bone dry to the touch. This is perfect. So this side is actually a little longer because it folded over, and it's much thinner here than it is here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut it right about here. We'll stack it on top of it, and we'll tie it together, and that's what I have this butcher's twine for. So let's get rid of the grate, put it on a cutting board, and we're just gonna cut it right when it starts to thin out. So right about here. And if you take a look, so this is a prime beef tenderloin. Beef tenderloin is filet. So we have some beautiful marbling here. And the outside is a completely different color. The outside is bone dry because of the dry brine, and the inside we have that beautiful color. So all I'm gonna do is get this nice and even or as close to even as we can, and we will truss it together. And this is how it's going to go on the rotisserie. So we're going to go ahead and tie this up, just getting it nice and even. So it's not going to be perfect, but honestly that's fine because we want some of this cooked medium rare and some of it a little more well done for my wife, who complains if it's any pink at all. So what we're going to do now is take this butcher's twine, tie it nice and tight. In a few spots. Don't worry about the length. We'll cut off the excess. And we're just gonna tie this super tight. I wasn't a Boy Scout, so these are gonna be pretty simple knots. And you want it nice and tight. This is going to be rotating. So you want to make sure it doesn't come apart. So this is pretty tight. It's not going anywhere. It's not super loose. It will shrink a bit once it cooks, and it may loosen up a little bit, but we'll go ahead and take a look at it then and see where we're at. And that's also why we have the clamps. So this won't go anywhere. But now what we want to do is cut off the excess because these strings will catch on fire. Now what we can do is we have to season it. I'm going to season it with Hardcore Carnivore Black. I'm doing this because beef tenderloin has a ton of flavor as it is. I mean, this is filet mignon, just a giant strip of it. So I don't need to go nuts with the seasoning. I don't have to go crazy. We already dry brined it, and this is not an overly salty rub. Lots of other rubs are mostly salt and then some other accents. This is not the case here. I am gonna season it lightly. I am not gonna coat this. This isn't gonna be jet black. I'm gonna season it lightly. And the last reason I'm going with this is great for sticking to dry meat. I don't necessarily want to rub this down with a binder. We are going to baste it in some butter as it's rotating, but I want to kind of keep this outside dry. So we're going to season it with this, but first I'm going to put the spigot on. And anytime we do a rotisserie, we want to make sure that we have this centered in the grill. So let's go outside, measure this, make sure that we have our clamps in the right spot, and then we'll go ahead and put the meat on. Okay, so what we need to do is get this spigot aligned. So my grill is green, I don't have charcoal in it yet, but we'll get there. So I'm gonna go ahead and put it in. And you see here we have lots of wiggle room as to where this meat goes. And I want it directly in the center. So if we just willy-nilly tried to figure it out, I may not have had the clamp right. I'll be shifting my meat around over a hot fire. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna take the clamp, we're gonna move it right over so we have our fire basket, and we're gonna move it right past the outer edge, and our meat is gonna sit right here, so it's gonna be right smack in the middle. There is a little bit of wiggle room with the rod here, so we'll leave it pushed all the way in, and then later, if we have to pull it out, we can, no big deal. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tighten this. So this is nice and tight. This side is gonna stay. We're gonna slide the meat on, and then we'll clamp the other side. Now we're good. So now I'm not messing with this over a hot fire, and we're good to go. So let's go back inside, and we'll get this rod in the meat. All right, so we've gotten this aligned, and now we know how that meat's gonna sit. So let's go ahead and shove it right through. What I'd like to do is get it between the seam here. Nice and easy. Push it all the way to the end. It's a little top heavy, so I may need to adjust this. Let's go ahead and make sure. Let's go from this side. Perfect. That's perfect. Okay. So now this is that weight is much more evenly distributed. We will get the other prong on. And now this giant, beautiful piece of meat is sitting on the rotisserie perfectly. And you see, this side is thinner than this side, and that's perfect because A, this is 2 pieces, and B, my wife likes well done. So it's a perfect way to not be messing around with this cook the entire time and having to slice pieces off, because I know they're gonna finish different temperatures when we're all said and done, and that's exactly what I want. The reason I like to put it on the spigot before I season it is because I'm just gonna take this and sit it in the fridge once we're done, because I still haven't set my fire and I want this to sit for a little bit. But if I were to, you saw how much I just had to handle it to get on the spigot. If it was already seasoned, a lot of that rub would come off and my hands would be gross. So let's go ahead and just lightly, this is filet mignon. I'm not trying to make this only taste like rub. This isn't a brisket, so we're just gonna lightly put some of this on, coat it. Not going crazy. I don't need to make sure every inch of this is covered. It looks more dramatic than it is because this is jet black. All right. So you see here, we applied, a good amount of rub. So it's not like we didn't put any on, but it is not completely coated. This isn't a brisket. We want a nice crust, but I need to be able to see the meat, and I don't only want to taste rub. I want to taste the delicious, filet mignon taste. So we're just gonna let this sit. I'm gonna put this in the fridge. We'll get the fire lit. Once the fire's lit and caught, then I will take this out. I will let this sit for about 30 minutes at room temperature, and then we'll go ahead and put it on. We want that grill at 400 degrees, and that's in the dome. And rotisserie is a little tricky because it's moving around, but 400 in the dome is fine. This will cook quick. It's gonna take about an hour. Maybe a few minutes more, a few minutes less, but this is about an hour. The next thing I'm gonna do while this is in the fridge, I'm just gonna melt some butter. And every 20 minutes or so, I'm just gonna baste it in some butter as it's rotating, just to do a butter baste as if we were doing it in a cast iron pan, except we're doing it over charcoal, and we're gonna get a much better crust. All right, let's get this fire lit. So I got a couple things going on here. We have our kick-ash basket in. I have my basket divider because we want our coals banked to one side. That serves 2 purposes. 1, it prevents flare-ups. And 2, you want to give that meat a break. It doesn't need constant heat every time it goes around. So I have 3 twills in. The reason I do this is I need an even fire for rotisserie. If we don't have an even fire and it's hotter on one side than the other, then obviously that side's gonna cook faster and hotter, and it's not like a piece of meat on the grill that I can just pick it up and move it if I see. It's rotating, so this side will burn faster or slower than this side if the fire's not even. So I'd rather overcompensate than undercompensate. And then I have a grill grate in here. I have this for 2 reasons. 1, I'm putting a tray of potatoes on here, and I'm also gonna have a little cup with some butter in it. I'm gonna let that butter melt, and that's what we're gonna use to baste the meat. And then 2, my wife likes well done. And I always get nervous that I'm either gonna overcook everything or undercook hers, and either way is miserable. So I have the grate here. This way, we're gonna take it off at a nice medium rare. We'll let it rest. I will cut her piece off and just throw it on these grates and cook it to well done. So we will come back in about 20 or 30 minutes when this is caught. We're looking for 400 degrees in the dome. All right, our grill is at a stable 400. So now we're gonna take our meat, throw it on the grill. I already have my potatoes in here and I have them banked. And the trick here is I've made sure that the insert here is level, so I'm not fidgeting over a hot fire, and it just pops right in. All right, we've had to take the potatoes out. If you come look, the way this is shaped, it was hitting the tray. So we took the potatoes out. Those are just gonna go in the oven. I was trying a little too hard. That just wasn't gonna happen. If I had maybe a classic 3 that was taller, I might've been able to do it, but the meat was hitting the tray. So this is gonna go just like this. The plan is still exactly the same. Let this go for about 20 minutes. I'm gonna take this cute little pot with my butter and rosemary. We're just gonna set it in here, let that butter melt, and that's what we're gonna use to baste this meat. So I'm just gonna shut this lid, and I'm not gonna check on it for 20 minutes. We have our meter probe in, and we need a meter probe because it is the only wireless probe, and obviously wires would get tangled. So I'm going to shut this lid, set up the meter probe in the app, and tell it to alert us when we hit like 120 degrees or so. So for now, we're waiting, and then we'll come back, we'll melt some butter, and we'll baste. All right, it's been about 20 minutes. Let's go ahead and check temperature in some random spots. 59, 30, 50. We got plenty of time to still go. This will be about an hour, hour and 20 total. So we'll let it go in about, I don't know, that bark or crust, since it's a steak and not a brisket, that crust isn't set just yet. So we'll give it another 10 minutes or so. Once I feel like that's set, we'll go ahead, put this on, let this melt, and start basting it. All right, it's been another 10 minutes or so. Our butter is melted. If you look here, our crust is looking fantastic. So we are just gonna baste it same way we would do if this was a cast iron pan. This is literally just butter and rosemary. And we're just gonna paint it on. Don't worry about the flare-ups. As soon as I shut the lid, those will go away. Do a full rotation. And now we shut the lid, and those flare-ups are gone. As soon as you see flare-ups like that, you just shut the lid and you're good to go. So we'll let this rotate another 15, 20 minutes or so. We'll do another baste, and I'll just keep checking the temperature. All right, we've done 2 bastings. It's been about an hour. I think we're done. Let's check. 100, 105, 90, 138. So we're all over the place. I'm gonna let it go 5, 10 more minutes. Then I'm just gonna take it off. We'll let it rest, and then we'll slice. So for now, a couple more minutes, we'll let it rest. All right, we are done. I just checked the internal temperature. We're like 120-ish. Some spots higher, some spots lower. So now we're just gonna take this off. I'm going to move this to this tray, and we're gonna take this out now. The longer I leave this on here, the harder it will be to take off later. So I'm gonna take this off right now. And I'm just gonna tent this and let it rest. We'll worry about the strings later. Yeah, I'll just tent this and let it rest. We'll worry about the strings later. You can hear that beautiful crust we have. And these gloves, I have said this 1,000,000 times, are perfect. I just touched the meat. We've got some grease on here. I literally will just wash these with soap and water. It's perfect. People always recommend welding gloves, and that's disgusting. These are super easy to clean. So now, I'm just gonna let it rest. I'll hit it with a little more butter. This butter baste. We'll put it under some foil. We'll let it rest 10 minutes, and then we'll cut in. All right, time to cut. It is chaos here. It's Easter, so don't mind the noise. We're gonna go ahead and slice the smaller piece. And this is perfect. My wife likes well done. She got well done. She's standing over me, judging it. We have this beautiful bark crust, very juicy. We'll move this to the side. Let's cut the big boy right down the middle. It just folds away. And we have a perfect medium rare. So this came out perfect. We have well done on the smaller piece, medium rare on the bigger piece. I have made a horseradish cream sauce. You can check out that video. And this is good to go. This came out amazing. I guess if I don't try it, let's try a piece. This is great. I need my horseradish, but this came out fantastic. The crust is the sole purpose for using the JoeTisserie instead of just cooking this regular. I love a nice crust, literally crunchy. If you sear it in a pan, you're gonna close in the juices, but you're not gonna get this same crunchy crust as you will in the JoeTisserie. Like, subscribe, comment down below, and let me know if you have any questions at all. Thank you very much for the watch.